Hi, everyone. Elysia and Mark Stevens are on the show today to talk about their book, Smelling Daisies. It's a time travel romance where Daisy, a soldier and romance novel enthusiast, is transported to medieval Scotland where she must navigate love, danger, and cultural clashes while caught between a protective laird and a psychotic baron. And this sounds like a lot of fun, and I can't wait to get started, but first we need to learn the inside scoop about the authors. Elysia Stevens is a big fan of rom-coms, which will not surprise anyone after reading Smelling Daisies. Most would describe her as eccentric in personality, which really stands out in her choice of attire. She loves to wear fun socks, and every Friday she celebrates Fabio Friday by wearing a Fabio T-shirt for all to enjoy. She really loves Fabio. Thankfully, her husband Mark Stevens has a lot of patience because Elysia can't sit still for more than 5 minutes at a time and always has her head in the clouds. He has been her partner in life for over 18 years, and there's nothing they can't and don't tackle together. Mark's tastes generally range from Stephen King to classic literature, but being the great guy that he is, he not only read her rom-com novel, but also co-authored it with her. Unfortunately, however, he still doesn't understand the appeal of a good naughty scene in a book, but she won't hold that against him, and neither should we. You can learn more about Elysia, Mark, and their work at ElysiaMarkStevensBooks.ca. Well, hi, Elysia and Mark. Welcome to Inside Scoop Live.
No, well, thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your book, Smelling Daisies, and then also a little bit about the inspiration for the story.
Well, I think kind of the short version would be, a young female veteran that, has kind of a love for romance novels, finds herself time traveling back to 13th century Scotland where she falls in love with a Scottish laird.
So let's just simplify this for everyone out there. It's pretty much Outlander smashed in with D.I. Jane. A lot of the inspiration, I think a lot of young females and just even females generally can relate with me when I say this, is that we're always daydreaming. I've been daydreaming about being rescued by my Prince Charming, my knight in shining armor, ever since I was a little girl. So I was that girl that would fall off her bike dramatically with hand on forehead, look around and go, oh, he's not there. So then I have to fight the dragon off. So Daisy was always there with me ever since I was a little girl. So when I finally got the chance and the opportunity to put the story down on paper, I did it, and I did it ferociously. And thankfully I had my husband to help me, because this story wouldn't be the story it is today without his help.
I was lucky enough to be taken along for the ride and give me an avenue to, kind of poke a little bit of fun here and there at some things that some people find pretty serious, I guess.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about your collaborative effort. How did that work?
It was fun to write because, we have kind of different writing styles, different senses of humor. So it was neat to be able to, her to go into a room and carve a piece out, and me to go into a room and carve a piece out, and then we smash them together and kind of laugh at what the other one wrote. And there'd be times where she'd be going, Mark, you can't write that. And I'd be like, wow, I think people are going to have, a chuckle at this. And it was fun to go through the whole story, kind of, male and female perspective. What do you think?
So just like any marriage, there's also a marriage with writing, and that is compromise. So my big thing is, I wanted a no-no scene, and my husband, I'm going to let him speak for himself.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more reserved, I guess, when I'm thinking about, a love scene in a story. And I don't have a big romance background. I've read a little bit of Nicholas Sparks here and there throughout the years, but I didn't get into any of the chewy scenes that Alicia's used to. So, when she first started putting stuff down on paper, I said, holy mackerel, you can't write that. And so, it was a little bit of compromise for the two of us to be able to come up with a happy medium that, I wouldn't blush if one of my friends read it. And she was happy enough that she could say, okay, yeah, this meets the criteria that I can call this my romance novel. So.
Yeah, we were able to create that steamy, sultry scene without being too much. I feel that a lot of the readers will actually appreciate that. So that's the fine balance and the compromise that you will find throughout the book, which I think will allow a lot of different readers to come in and feel comfortable with reading this romance novel.
Yeah. I mean, there's a genre for that, erotica. But I mean, if you want to get real down and dirty, so to speak, but
let's do it.
What I found surprising is that, I'll be in the middle of like a sci-fi novel and all of a sudden there's this erotica scene. I'm like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
I really agree with you. A lot of the modern day books are going in that direction, and it even makes me blush.
Yeah, some of it's pretty out there. So back to your story. So now Daisy's military background is integral to her character. What kind of shaped this aspect of her identity?
Well, I think it started right when Daisy was just a wee little girl. Her dad was military, which made her a military brat. And he wanted to make sure his daughter was very independent and could take care of herself. Being a soldier, he probably saw lots of the world that he wanted to make sure that his daughter, if faced with it, could get herself out of. So this was the starting point of Daisy growing into the woman she is today.
Yeah, I think she has the warrior spirit that you'll see kind of throughout the novel that the military obviously instills from indoctrination from basic training on. I think also, coming from that military background, it also gives us a chance to kind of explore her vulnerabilities with, some of the things that she struggles through throughout the book with, operational stress injuries and some post-traumatic stress disorder from, some unfortunate incidents that occurred in the book. But the military background kind of shapes her and makes her that tough, rugged, likable character that most people find as they're reading it.
Yeah. So I can definitely see the cross between Outlander and G.I. Jane. And as a female, I love a strong female character. I've read some of the feedback on your book. Strong female leads, kick-ass, femme fatale, all that great stuff. But I really like to see the female lead with the military background. I feel like that's a little bit different.
For sure.
So who has the military background?
We actually both have a military background. Alicia's retired military, and I'm currently serving. I've almost got 23 years in. So our kind of life stories and friends and experiences and everything kind of shaped a lot of the technical sides of it, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's great. So you've got a lot going on in this book. Grief and loss play significant roles in your narrative. Why were these themes important to include, and what guided your approach to writing them?
I think grief and loss are, kind of human experiences that everybody can relate to. So it's something that, we wanted to make sure that we highlighted, that we didn't create a character, a one-dimensional character that all she was doing was, kicking bum and taking names. That we wanted to make sure that we explored her vulnerability as well and made sure that, we kind of set her up to be able to stage, how she overcame those obstacles and how she was able to put some of the stuff that she was struggling with into perspective and be able to work through those challenges. What do you think?
So I think the biggest part too that guided our approach with writing grief and loss was the research. As you know, and everyone knows out there, everyone grieves differently. And this to us was a very important part that we nailed it. So we researched, grabbed everything that we wanted to, and created Daisy, who lost her mother, lost her father, and lost more people throughout the book. This created these walls with Daisy as a character that we wanted to slowly chip away at and see them fall as she goes into medieval Scotland, meets a woman, Mari, who becomes one of her best friends, and then meets Alec, who is now her new love interest, and how his role plays with trying and help Daisy find love again. And so I think the readers will appreciate the approach that we took. And yeah, I look forward to hearing more reviews about it and seeing what people think, because Mark and I are really happy with how we wrote Daisy.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about her character, and I feel like she's not your typical, historical romance heroine because of her background. What was the biggest challenge in writing her?
Well, I think probably the fact that she is, so sassy and, kind of does her own thing. She beats to her own drum the whole way through. So it was kind of tough sometimes to kind of intertwine the 13th century expectations of what a female should be like with what her modern day version of, her independence and everything that she kind of, expressed as a veteran of the Canadian Forces. So, it was kind of an interesting way to try and work that character development throughout the novel. What do you think?
And I think it also the vulnerability, because me, myself, being what I would like to think is a tough person, I have a tough time being vulnerable at times. So that to me was very personal, I guess, when I was writing Daisy. And I wanted to make sure that I gave her justice when I wrote her and explored that vulnerability. So I guess I kind of had growth as a writer as well with Daisy.
Yeah, yeah. Did you do any like read alouds to each other to make sure like the dialogue was coming across and the feeling was coming across to just kind of role playing?
Definitely.
Or, yeah.
When Mark wrote a scene, I would be like, "You can't do that," and then next thing you know, oh, that's what my character would say.
Yeah, there was times when I think I mentioned it before that we'd go off and we'd write our own little pieces or whatever. And sometimes I'd write something and she'd be like, that's so childish, Marker. That's, so, typical,
Immature.
yeah, typical kind of male, point of view. But then when you put the two together and then you start, a lot of the character development that goes in there is actual, bantering that happens between Elysia and I at home. So I think that the bantering that we have at home plays across the pages. And I think that, it really comes through when the characters start developing those relationships and everything. So.
Yeah. Well, that
I
definitely makes it more authentic.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was going to say almost the exact same thing you were going to say. A lot of people have said it's very authentic and real. Like it's a real argument happening between two people.
Yeah.
Right.
Everyone loved the dialogue, is what I've been told by friends and family.
That's good because that can be a tricky business to conquer for sure. Now, time travel, that's also a tricky element. What were some of the challenges in writing two different time periods?
Yeah, it was actually one of those things that we were warned about as we were writing it by other authors and by the editor. And, kind of throughout it was time travel is one of those sticky pieces. There's no kind of happy medium. It's either, turns out really well or it's a flop. So, a lot of people said, stay clear of time travel. Don't go down that path. It's like a Rubik's Cube that you can't pull the stickers off. One wrong twist and it's all screwed up. But I'll let Elysia talk.
So this is where I thrived. I've been an avid reader. I love movies. I've always been that person that can connect the dots quickly. I figure out the murderer in a thriller within the first 5 minutes. So this was my jam. And I absolutely loved writing the plots, the twists, connecting the dots with future and time, and making sure when it all came together at the end, readers would say, oh, I can't believe I missed that. She kind of put some breadcrumbs over here that would have told us this was going to happen. So this part of the story was probably my favorite part in writing.
Yeah, and I think she nailed it.
Nice.
I always have to help him in the movies, tell him what's happening.
Terminator, I'm like, so that's his dad, but he's younger than him. How's he coming? Mark, just sit back, enjoy it.
Yeah, my husband does that too. He's like, well, this isn't real. Well, no, it's fantasy, right? You got to allow for that creativity. Well, I know one thing, 13th century Scotland is not somewhere I would want to inadvertently time travel to or on purpose either. What kind of surprised you the most during your research into 13th century Scotland?
Oh, this is a good one. Elysia, what do you think?
So mine was women didn't wear underwear. I thought that was just absurd. Like wearing a dress and no underwear. Oh my. Well, everyone can just, their imaginations can go where they want to go with that one. But I couldn't imagine the elements being so close to my withering bits down below. But
the original cover had Daisy over his shoulder with panties on, and then Elysia got doing some digging. She's like, wait a minute, they don't even wear panties.
So I had to come up with some creative ways of how to bring underwear into this story. And then also speaking of creative ways and trying to bring in kilts. Kilts didn't exist in the 13th century. Yes.
Everybody thinks of old Scotland and your brain goes right to Mel Gibson and Braveheart with his plaid kilt. And we could.
Yeah.
Wow, it ruined the mood for me. I was like, are you kidding me? So when I learned that.
Or they wear tunics.
Yeah, they wear tunics. And Mark was ready to throw in the towel and said, screw it. Let's just keep the kilt in. And I said, nope.
I actually argued with her and I said, sometimes, Elysia, you got to make some compromises. What do people want to read? Do they want to read about tunics? Do they want to read about kilts? But she put a lot of time and research into it. And, throughout the book, there was a lot of the times that might not have been the easiest path to take, but it was the path that, the research kind of took us to. So, and Elysia was steadfast with the fact that if they weren't kilts, they're not going to be wearing kilts. So
I wanted to try and keep historically correct as much as I could with my story. So again, we go back to one of the questions near the beginning. We collaborated with compromise.
Yeah. You probably noticed though he's wearing a kilt, and if you read the book, you'll find out how that made it in there. That's again another one of these little twists that Elysia likes to squeeze in there.
Oh, okay.
I get what I want in the end. I get my man in a kilt.
Happy wife, happy life. So there wasn't any considering alternative time periods, right? What drew you to 13th century Scotland in particular?
Okay, so this is totally me. My favorite book, and it's even, I bring it up in Smelling Daisies, is Ransom by Julie Garwood.
Mm-hmm.
I love Broderick, and Gillian's a feisty young lady too. And so in that, I always, whenever I need to read a book or a romance novel, that's the one I go to. I've read it a dozen times. And so I've always been drawn to the 13th century. A lot happens in the 13th century with King John and King William of Scots. So there is great ways to bring in tension with just the character development and bringing in that valuable part with Daisy and Alec with the war aspect of the story.
Okay. So you had your heart set on a time period in that.
And there was no turning back after that.
Yeah.
I said the same thing. Like, well, what's wrong with 14th century?
Yeah.
15th century.
Yeah, I don't know.
I love that though, because I would have focused on the kilts. Nope, have to have kilts.
Yeah.
So
you would have sided with Mark.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Let's talk about a couple of the other characters. Tell us a little bit about Laird. How did you strike a balance between his historical authenticity and his appeal to modern readers?
So Laird Alec, I'm going to let Mark talk about this one because that's kind of his baby.
So you take a rough and tumble Scotsman, big Scottish accent, big, strong, strapping lad, and you throw him into the book, and pretty well that all the heavy lifting's already been done before you need to even put pen to paper. He's kind of striking to the female persuasion anyway. But I think, whether it's modern day or 13th century, I think that you've probably got the same ticks in the box that need to be kind of massaged to make sure that everybody finds him as a likable character. And, as we were going through it, some of the humor that he does back then kind of transcends to what, kind of the humor that we have nowadays as well. And again, it's stuff that Elysia would go back, because I'd write something funny. I'd write a joke or something that he's doing. And she'd be like, they wouldn't even do that back then. And then, she would find some kind of a reference or something. Maybe I guess it does happen back then too. So it's one of those things that when you pick, if we could have, picked maybe a different accent, maybe it wouldn't have been as appealing. But, there's not too many women that I could think of that aren't drawn to a strong Scottish accent.
Right.
I would agree. I married a Scotsman, so
Ah,
I know. Ooh la la.
Oh, I love it. Now, tell us a little bit about Baron Thomas. He was described as psychotic. Tell me all about him. What inspired his creation? What was it like writing from his perspective?
That's another one that, we talked about the love scenes being a bit of tension in the writing phase. The Baron was another part that the two of us had different perspectives of where we should go with it. Elysia, she kind of started tackling the antagonist character. And when she started off, she had some scenes written and I read them and I thought, holy crap, Elysia, people are going to wake up with night terrors. They're going to get a chapter into it and not want to read any further. So,
yeah, he wanted to commit me. He's like, I can't believe this came out of your imagination.
Where did this come from? But we ended up finding a happy balance where, we wanted to make somebody that was not likable. He was a maniac that, you wanted to see him fail, but not so bad that, people would have nightmares.
Yeah, he said I put Stephen King to shame. I was like, ooh, okay. Yeah. So dial it back. I'm hearing dial it back.
Who is this person I married? Now, what about the famous Scottish warrior queen? She shares some similarities with Daisy. What role does she play in the larger narrative?
So in Celtic culture, and you hear a lot about the fables and the stories that have been timeless. So I wanted to pull in a fable. So when I did the research, I came across Skaha, which is the warrior queen. And the great thing was when I started reading about her tales, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my Daisy.
Yes. And it's, the military background with the fighting spirit and the warrior heart. I think that was a natural kind of connection with the warrior queen. So I think that adding those two levels together, I think it added some depth to the story, that it wasn't just a random time travel piece, that she's actually connected in some way, shape, or form to the warrior queen, and that could be potentially where she gets her warrior spirit from.
Yeah. Okay. I love the element of historical fiction. I don't think you're marketing it as that, but there is a lot of that in it, right? Or are you?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily marketed that way, but I
Hmm.
think that when people read it, they'll enjoy some of the nuances throughout it. And there's some parts where I said to Elysia, because there was a lot of stuff that was going on where she was adding a lot of specifics, where somebody would have to read a paragraph and then grab a dictionary to figure out what what we were talking about. So I think that it got scaled back to the point where it's accurate, and it's depicts that time period, but not so much that it would slow the reader down and not understand kind of the point of where it was going. So yeah.
Right. Tell me a little bit about prophecies. They often add an air of mystery to stories. And what way does the prophecy about Daisy's arrival shape the novel?
When we added that into it, I think that it was an important piece to add some tension that wouldn't necessarily have been there otherwise. So the prophecy, it gives Alec always that sense of fear that Daisy's going to fall into the same fate as the warrior queen. So the prophecy would state that the warrior queen, because of all of her heroic actions and everything, eventually would meet her demise. And I think that Alec wanted to let Daisy fly, let her do her thing, but at the same time was always worried that that was going to be the last fight for her, that she was going to meet the same demise. So I think that Alec the whole way through was hoping, he was skeptical that she wasn't actually that prophecy that they all said that she was, but at the same time was proud of her for being that way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was definitely the plot buildup that we needed for Alec and his growth, with realizing that Daisy can't be wrapped up in bubble wrap, that he has to at least let her be the person that she is been her whole entire life. And that's that hero, that person that won't stand by and just let somebody get hurt. She'll be picking up that sword along with the other soldiers, even though she doesn't know how to use it, but she will do her best, her gallant effort. So no, I think that was definitely a huge important part for building Alec's character.
Yeah. What was it like, the two of them kind of adjusting to each other? I mean, obviously Daisy was aware she was in a different time period, but Alec was as well because of the prophecy.
Alec didn't know Daisy was from the future. He just had this woman show up on his front doorstep that kind of intrigued him. And then later on, as time went on, he got more interested in her and was trying to be the knight in shining armor by protecting her. And the way he was doing that was actually stifling Daisy.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the people spoke of Daisy as the warrior queen. They said that the prophecy stated that she would arrive, and she had arrived. So that's what they assumed was that she was from that time period, as some kind of a mythical prophecy.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it. Yeah. So, how do you think Smelling Daisies stands apart from other books in the genre? And I know it's a mix of genres, but in like the time travel and historical romance genres.
There's a little touch of some battle scenes in Afghanistan, starting the story off, and actually peppered throughout it.
Mm.
So with her military background, 1 minute she's dealing with IEDs or assault rifles, and then the next thing she's fighting with swords in 13th century Scotland. I think that and you kind of hold it side by side with another novel, and with the fact that you've got a male female perspective, it reads a lot different than you would most novels.
Hmm.
When I read novels and I get excited when I hear rom-com, I'm like, ooh, this is going to be good. But when you're living with a person that's quick-witted and hilarious, they tend to fall a little short.
Mm.
So having my husband on board to help with the humor side of the book, I think just makes it stand out more than any book I have read. As you said, I still chuckle at the same parts I've read probably 20 times. Let's be realistic. But I go, ooh, I forgot about that. That is funny. Um, our editor said it was hilarious with a capital H, and I think she is right. I think readers are going to really enjoy the humor in this story, and they will be laughing probably for hours afterwards.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to book the rest of the day off.
If if you're not laughing in the first 4 paragraphs of the story, then the story is probably not going to be funny for you. But I guarantee people will be laughing and chuckling in the first chapter.
I love it. I love it. So, what brought you the most satisfaction, and what do you hope readers will take away from Daisy's adventure?
For me, I think it was watching the character develop on page. Daisy, if anybody knows Elysia and I, they'll kind of read some similarities between not only just stories in the book, they can kind of tie to stories that happen in their lives. They're like, wait a minute, that was us that happened with. But also the fact that, a lot of the characteristics of Daisy or Elysia coming out on page, and some of the other characters would find that are me. So for me, it was kind of awesome to be able to see a fictitious character come to life on page that mimics, the love of my life so much. I think that was kind of interesting and exciting for me.
Oh, I know, so cheesy.
Say something nice
He
about
said
me
he
now.
was a romantic.
Right?
I think the fun part was like when my husband got involved and started helping me out through a lot of the areas where I was struggling, and how we were able to work as a team. There hasn't been too much in our lives that we haven't been able to work closely together and thrive and do really well in. So to be able to put my husband's name in the book too as a co-author was pretty satisfying to me. And I think the biggest part that I want readers to take away is probably that I want them to say to themselves, did these 2 authors write about me? And then look over their shoulders as if someone's watching them. I think Daisy and Alec will relate to a lot of the public. And I think that's what, as a reader, you want that in a story.
Yeah, I think people will look at Daisy and, you watch a movie and you'll see somebody get out of bed and their hair's perfect and their makeup's perfect and their teeth are already brushed. And you're thinking, how's that possible? They just got out of bed. And Daisy's not that character. She's about as, real as you could possibly come across. So I think when people start reading through it, they're going to laugh and say like, wow, that's me.
Yeah. I love that. Will you continue Daisy's story in future books?
Well, for sure. And really, it's going to be the readers that shape where the story goes after this. So at the end of the book, there's a link to our website, and the readers are going to be given an option to be able to choose kind of the path of where the next story goes. So, I wouldn't say a choose your own adventure, but it definitely is going to shape how the next story develops. And it's interesting because on the website, and anybody that doesn't want any spoiler alerts, don't go to the voting section on our website until you're finished reading it. But we've got percentages showing where the majority of the readers are voting right now. And when we finished the book, we thought, this is definitely going to be where people want to go. And it's a different direction than what we were expecting. So it's going to be fun to be able to, take some of the input from the readers and be able to shape that to kind of model our next novel. So we're looking forward to it.
Oh, wow. That's so fun. I love getting the audience involved like that.
Yeah, I came up with that idea when I went to a book conference, and readers were really upset with the author when she chose a different love interest for one of her main characters in a series.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I came up with an idea of going, what if I let my readers choose what direction my book will go?
Okay. Yeah. So are you setting like a time limit on it?
There's a time limit when the voting stops, and then that's going to be where we take it and run. We've got some ideas that we're kind of floating around our head. If it goes this way, we're going to go this direction. If it goes this way, we're going to go this direction.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, once the voting stops, did we pick April next year?
April 22nd, our anniversary.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I like to make little connections.
Yeah.
I'm cheesy too.
Did y'all set out to write this book together, or did it kind of just happen?
No, it just happened. Alicia's been floating this idea around for 7 years. It's been dancing around in her head, and then she would kind of talk to me about something she was thinking of, and I'm like, yeah, but what if you did this? And then she'd start writing a little bit on that, and then I'd add some more, and I'd write a paragraph or two, and then say, think about maybe something like along these lines. So the 2 of us ended up collaborating. We didn't even actually start collaborating until probably a year and a half ago to kind of put the entire story together and create its finished product. So.
Well, Elysia and Mark, is there anything else you wanted to add today?
No, we're happy that you gave us the chance to chat with you. We love answering all your questions, and we hope that everybody enjoys reading Daisy's Adventures as much as we enjoyed writing them.
Okay. And for those that have read the book or haven't read the book, but are going to after listening to this podcast, why don't you give us your website real quick?
Sure. Yeah. If anybody wants to, pop on and see how we're making out, or if they want to vote where they want to see the direction of the next book going, it's ElysiaMarkStevensBooks.ca.
Thank you two so much for joining me. I really enjoyed it. It sounds like you have a lot of fun doing what you're doing, so keep at it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having us. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for joining me today for my interview with Elysia and Mark Stevens, author of Smelling Daisies. To learn more about Elysia and Mark, visit their website at elysiamarkstevensbooks.ca. And be sure to check out our other interviews at InsideScoopLive.com.